The officers' club at Fort Bragg was a world away from the dust and grit of the real army. It was a place of dark carpets, heavy curtains, and the quiet clinking of glasses. The air smelled like old wood and expensive wax. This was where the brass gathered, the men and women who wore stars and eagles on their shoulders, and tonight it was hosting the annual Joint Services family fundraiser. Captain Eva Rostova felt like a ghost in a borrowed uniform. She stood near the back wall, one hand resting on the small shoulder of her 8-year-old son, Leo. Her army green service uniform was perfectly pressed, her captain's bars gleaming, but on her the uniform looked simple, almost plain. She was slender, with quiet eyes and hair pulled back so tightly it looked severe. She knew what people saw when they looked at her: a pencil pusher, a support staffer, a face in the administrative crowd. Leo, on the other hand, was vibrating with excitement. He had a stubborn cough that worried her, but tonight he was just happy to be at the castle with his mom. He looked up at her, his eyes shining. "Mom, is the general here?" Eva smiled, a small, tired smile. "I'm not sure, sweetie, but it's a big night. All the important people are here." "You're important," Leo said, his voice full of the absolute certainty only a child can have. "You're a captain." Eva's heart felt a squeeze. She wanted to believe it, but rooms like this had a way of making her feel small. She was a single mother in a world run by men. She was a warrior who spent most of her time hiding her scars, fighting for medical appointments for Leo's chronic asthma, and trying to balance a soldier's duty with a mother's love. The buzz in the room suddenly intensified. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. In the center, walking with the heavy, confident steps of a man who owned every room he entered, was Rear Admiral Marcus Thorne. He was the guest of honor, a SEAL. He was tall, with a thick chest, a booming voice, and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He was a warrior's warrior, a man who loved the spotlight and the sharp, salty smell of combat. He was everything Eva was not. Admiral Thorne worked the room, shaking hands, clapping men on the back, and smiling a brilliant white smile that never quite reached his cold, blue eyes. He was a politician in camouflage. His entourage of Navy aides followed him like pilot fish, laughing at every joke, hanging on every word. Eva tried to blend into the wallpaper, but it was no use. The Admiral was on a path, and she and Leo were directly in it. He stopped in front of them. His smile widened, but his eyes swept over Eva's uniform with a dismissive glance. He saw the captain's bars, and his smile became a little thinner. He clearly assumed she was some low-level staffer. He bent down, putting his hands on his knees to get to Leo's level. "Well, hello there, little man. You here with your mom?" Thorne boomed. Leo, starstruck, just nodded, a small cough escaping him. Thorne chuckled and straightened up, turning his full, overpowering attention to Eva. "Captain, I see. Good for you." He looked her up and down. "What's your specialty? Adjutant's Corps, Human Resources." His tone was light, like he was telling a friendly joke, but the question underneath was sharp. "What does someone like you do?" Eva kept her face neutral, her back straight. "Something like that, sir." Thorne laughed, a loud, barking sound that made the people around them turn. "I knew it. Human Resources, making sure the paperwork is filed in triplicate, right? Keeping the coffee hot for the real warriors." The officers with him snickered. It was a joke. It was just a joke, but it felt like a slap. Eva's face remained calm, but her hand tightened on Leo's shoulder. She had been shot at. She had been stranded in deserts. She had held the hands of dying men, and this man in his fancy uniform was calling her a coffee maker. "Well, someone's gotta do it," Thorne continued, oblivious to the steel in her eyes. "My compliments to your efficiency, Captain." He reached out and patted Leo on the head, a gesture of casual ownership. "You be proud of your mom, kid. She's a real hero, a hero of the filing cabinet." And with that, he was gone, moving on to the next person, his laughter echoing behind him. The group moved with him, leaving Eva and Leo in the sudden, cold silence of his wake. The insult hung in the air, thick and toxic. A few people nearby looked at Eva with a mix of pity and embarrassment, then quickly looked away. No one wanted to be associated with the butt of the Admiral's joke. Leo looked up at her, his face crinkled in confusion. He was young, but he knew what being mocked felt like. "Mom, what did he mean you're not a file cabinet?" Eva took a deep breath. She looked down at her son, at his worried face, and her heart ached. This was the injustice. It wasn't just about her. It was about the world her son was seeing. She forced a smile, the one she used when things were hard. "He was just making a bad joke, sweetie," she said, her voice low and steady. "The Admiral, he doesn't know me." "Oh," Leo said, not quite understanding. Eva watched the Admiral across the room, already the center of a new circle, telling a story that was making the men laugh and the women blush. She thought about her real job. She thought about the mission she had just returned from, the one where she hadn't slept for 72 hours. The one where the real warriors had been pinned down and she had been the one to get them out. No, she thought, her eyes turning to ice. He doesn't know me, but he will. The rest of the evening was a blur. Eva and Leo left early. As she tucked him into his bed in their small, two-bedroom apartment far from the fancy homes on base, he coughed again, a dry, rattling sound. "Mom," he whispered in the dark. "I'm here, baby." That man was mean. Eva stroked his hair. Yes, he was. "You're a real hero, Mom. I know you are." Eva closed her eyes. "Go to sleep, Leo. We have a big day tomorrow." She sat in her living room for a long time after he was asleep, the silence of the apartment pressing in on her. On her coffee table, next to a stack of Leo's medical bills, was a small, framed photo. It was her and her team, 6 of them, in the middle of a sandstorm, their faces covered in grit, their eyes hard. On the back, in faded marker, was a single word: Viper. Admiral Thorne had made a mistake. He had insulted her in public. He had mocked her as a woman, a captain, and a mother. But his biggest mistake was that he had done it in front of her commanding officer, Colonel Sharp, who had been standing in the corner, watching the whole thing. And Colonel Sharp knew exactly who she was. To understand Captain Eva Rostova, you couldn't look at her in dress greens. You had to see her in the dust. You had to see her when the world was ending, and the only thing standing between chaos and order was her. 3 months before the fundraiser, Eva was not at Fort Bragg. She was in a dry, desolate corner of Syria where the air tasted like burned metal and fear. She was the leader of a small, specialized team. They weren't SEALs. They weren't Delta. They were Special Forces, Green Berets. They didn't just break down doors, they built relationships. They operated in the shadows, in the gray areas that politicians and admirals like to pretend didn't exist. The mission was a disaster. A SEAL team, a direct action unit under Admiral Thorne's larger command umbrella, had gone in loud to capture a high-value terrorist leader known as the Butcher. They had intelligence, but it was bad. The target wasn't in a remote compound. He was in a small, mud-brick village, using the locals as human shields. The SEALs hit the village hard at 300, and the village hit back. It was a trap. The Butcher had been waiting for them. The SEALs were pinned down, taking heavy fire from multiple fortified positions. The SEAL commander, a young, aggressive lieutenant, was screaming over the radio for air support. He wanted a danger-close strike from an AC-130 gunship, a strike that would level the village, the civilians, and his own men just to kill the Butcher. Eva's team was 2 miles away, hidden on a ridge, their mission officially just overwatch. They were there to observe and report, to be the in-case option. The radio crackled. "Hammer 1-1, this is Titan. We are pinned. I need that air support now. I am calling in a broken arrow." A broken arrow was the code for a unit in danger of being overrun. It was a sound of pure panic. Eva lay on her stomach, her rifle's scope pressed to her eye. She could see the whole terrible picture. She saw the muzzle flashes. She saw the tracers cutting the night apart. And she saw the old, terrified faces of the village elders peeking from a cellar not 50 yards from the SEAL's position. "Negative, Titan." Eva's voice cut through the radio, calm and cold as a river stone. There was a stunned silence. "Who is this?" the SEAL lieutenant yelled. "Identify." "This is Viper," Eva said. "Stand down, air. I'm countermanding your request. You fire on that village and you kill us all." "I don't care who you are, Viper. I am the on-scene commander and I am being overrun." "No, you're not," Eva said. "You're in a box. Stop acting like prey." She turned to her own team. "Sergeant, you have the comms. Keep that SEAL talking. Keep him angry. I want the Butcher's men focused on him." Her first sergeant, a man named Grizz, nodded. He trusted her with his life. "What are you doing, boss?" "I'm going for a walk," Eva said. She checked her sidearm, slung her rifle, and grabbed a small, rolled-up bundle. It wasn't a weapon. It was a packet of tea and a photo of a local elder's grandchildren. She didn't put on heavy armor. She didn't grab extra grenades. She just slipped away. She moved down the ridge not like a soldier, but like a shadow. She didn't use the streets. She used the ancient, crumbling tunnels that honeycombed the ground beneath the village, tunnels she had spent the last 2 months mapping. The locals had shown them to her. They trusted her. She moved under the firefight. She could hear the muffled thunder of the .50 caliber machine guns above her. The SEALs were fighting a loud, brutal war of attrition. Eva was fighting a different war. She emerged in a small cellar right into the middle of the terrified village elders. When they saw her, they didn't scream. They knew her. She had drunk tea with them. She had listened to their stories. She spoke in their dialect, her voice soft. "The men who are here, the loud ones, they are not my people, but they are in trouble. The butcher has them in a trap, and he is using you as his shield. He will kill us all," one old man whispered, his hands shaking. "He will," Eva agreed, "unless you help me." "What can we do? We are old men." "You can get your people out. There is a tunnel," she pointed. "That leads to the old well. Take everyone there. My men will be waiting. They will protect you, but you have to go now, and you have to tell me where the butcher is." The old man looked at her. He saw no fear in her eyes. "He is in the mosque. He uses the holy place as his fortress. He knows you Americans will not bomb it." "Thank you," Eva said. "Go, be safe." As the elders filed out, Eva moved back into the tunnels. She keyed her radio, her voice still calm. "Grizz, I have the location, mosque. He's using it as his command post. I'm going in." "Viper, wait. That's a two-man job at least." "No time," Eva said. "Keep the SEALs busy." She moved through the darkness, her senses alive. She was the Ghost Viper now. The name had been given to her by an Afghan partner who said she moved with no sound and struck with deadly precision. She came up inside the mosque's courtyard. Two of the butcher's guards were there, laughing, pointing at the firefight in the distance. They never heard her. Two quick, suppressed thwips from her sidearm, and they were down. She didn't kill them. She didn't have to. She used non-lethal rounds. They would be asleep for hours. She entered the main building. She could hear him, the butcher. He was on a satellite phone, yelling at his men. She moved past the prayer rugs, past the holy books. She saw him, a big, bearded man surrounded by maps. He turned, sensing something. He saw her, a woman. His eyes went wide, first in shock, then in rage. He lunged for his rifle. He wasn't fast enough. Eva moved like lightning. She wasn't there to kill him. She was there to take him. Dead, he was a martyr. Alive, he was a fountain of information. The fight was brutal, short, and silent. She used hand-to-hand combat he had never seen. She broke his wrist, dislocated his shoulder, and had him zip-tied and gagged before he could even scream. She keyed her radio. "Viper to Titan, the package is wrapped. I need you to create a diversion, a big one, on my mark." "A diversion?" the SEAL lieutenant stammered. "What kind?" "A loud one," Eva said. "Fire all your machine guns at the north wall for exactly 30 seconds. Mark, now." The night erupted in gunfire. As the butcher's remaining men turned to the sound, Eva calmly walked out the back door of the mosque, dragging the terrorist leader with her. She met her team at the extraction point, right as the village elders and their families were being loaded onto a quiet, waiting truck. The SEALs were finally able to pull back, confused, angry, and alive. They never saw her. They never knew who had saved them. The mission was classified. The official report said the SEALs had successfully disengaged after a data-gathering operation. Back in the present, Eva Rostova sat in her quiet apartment at Fort Bragg. She looked at the medical bills for Leo. His condition was getting worse, and the doctors at Womack Army Medical Center were recommending a specialist. A specialist that TRICARE, the military's insurance, was refusing to cover. This was her life. By night, she was the Ghost Viper, a legend whispered about in classified reports. By day, she was Captain Rostova, a single mother fighting a bureaucracy for her child's health. The fundraiser, Admiral Thorne's insult? It was more than just a slight. It was a symbol of her entire struggle. The men who got the credit, the men like Thorne, were loud and flashy. They moved in the light, but she lived in the gray. She picked up the phone. She had to call the TRICARE office. Again. She had to fight another battle, not with a rifle, but with a phone and a polite, firm voice. She had to beg and plead and quote regulations, all to get her son the care he needed. She took a deep breath. She was a hero of the filing cabinet, after all. She was used to paperwork. She put the photo of her team face down. The Viper was hidden. Captain Rostova, the single mom, was on duty. The morning after the fundraiser, the insult still hung in the air like sour smoke. Eva dropped Leo off at school, his small hand clinging to hers for an extra second. His cough was deeper. The worry was a constant, cold knot in her stomach. When she arrived at her office at the U.S. Army Special Operations Command Headquarters, her first sergeant, Grizz, was waiting. He was a mountain of a man who had been with her for 3 tours. He knew exactly who she was. "Morning, boss," he said, his voice a low rumble. He held out a cup of black coffee. "Heard the O Club was interesting last night." The base was a small town. News traveled fast. "It was fine, Grizz," Eva said, taking the coffee. She was already in work mode. The world of emotions and insults was being locked away. "The word is Admiral Thorne is a real piece of work," Grizz pressed, following her into her small, windowless office. It was a SCIF, a sensitive, compartmented information facility. The walls were bare, the computers were heavy-duty, and the air was always recycled. "He's a guest of the command, First Sergeant. That's all," Eva said, sitting down. "Right, a guest," Grizz snorted. "Well, that guest just announced a surprise joint training exercise. He's been brought in as an outside evaluator to shake things up." Eva stopped typing. She looked up. "Shake things up, what does that mean?" "It means he thinks we're soft," Grizz said, his face darkening. "He thinks the Army, our part of the Army, has gotten too academic. He wants to show us how the real operators do it, SEAL style." A cold feeling settled on Eva. She knew exactly what that meant. It meant loud, explosive, and dumb. It meant breaking things and not caring about the consequences. "And guess who's running the whole scenario?" Grizz added. "Thorne," Eva said. It wasn't a question. "In the flesh, and he's designed the whole problem. Word is he's making it unwinnable. He wants to prove his point. He wants to humiliate us." Just then the phone on Eva's desk buzzed. It was the secure line. "Rostova," she answered. "Captain," a voice said. It was Colonel Sharp, her commanding officer, the man who had seen the whole incident with Thorne. "My office now, and bring Grizz." Colonel Sharp's office was bigger, but it still had no windows. He was a thin, wiry man with eyes that saw everything. He didn't waste time with small talk. "You heard about the exercise?" he said. "Yes, sir," Eva replied. "The Admiral has designed a hostage rescue scenario. It's complex. A multinational target set in a simulated urban environment. A real mess." Sharp leaned forward. "He's expecting us to fail. He's already told the General that our methods are too slow and risk-averse." "He wants a show," Grizz rumbled. "He wants explosions." "Exactly," Sharp said. "He wants us to go in hard, breach and clear, and he's set traps. The hostages are wired. The terrorists have chemical weapons. The rules of engagement are impossible. If we go in loud, we kill the hostages. If we don't go in, we lose the hostages. It's a no-win scenario." Eva was silent, her mind already working, turning the problem over and over. "Sir," Eva said, "what's the objective? To win the game or to show him how we operate?" Sharp almost smiled. This was why she was his best. "Thorne thinks he's testing our tactics. I want to test him. I'm assigning you as the lead planner for this, Captain." Eva's head snapped up. "Sir." "This isn't a punishment, Captain. It's an opportunity. The Admiral made a fool of himself the other night. He insulted you, and he insulted this command. But he's not just a fool, he's dangerous. He believes his way is the only way. He's going to get good men killed one day." Sharp stood up and walked to the large map on his wall. "He thinks you're a file clerk. I want him to see who you really are. I want you to plan this operation. I want you to run it. And I want you to do it your way, the Ghost Viper way." Grizz's jaw set. He looked at Eva with a fierce, proud light in his eyes. "Admiral Thorne will be in the operations center," Sharp continued. "He'll be watching every screen. He's expecting a SEAL team. I want you to give him a Special Forces solution." "Yes, sir," Eva said, her voice quiet but firm. The doubt was gone. This was her world. "He needs to see, Captain," Sharp said, his voice softening for just a second. "Not for your sake, for his." For the next 48 hours, Eva Rostova disappeared. She lived in the SCIF. She and her team, Grizz, a comms specialist, a cyber warfare expert, and a psychops planner, tore Thorne's unwinnable scenario apart. The other officers, mostly from the 75th Ranger Regiment, were planning a direct action assault. They were focused on the hard targets, the walls, the guards, the doors. Their plan was all speed, violence, and aggression. "We hit the main gate and the roof at the same time," a major from the Rangers said, pointing at a map. "Flashbangs, breaching charges. We're in and out in 4 minutes." Eva sat at the back of the room, listening. She hadn't said a word for an hour. "Captain Rostova," the Ranger Major said, annoyed. "Does your team have anything to add, or are you just here to take notes?" Eva stood up. She walked to the front of the room, past the complicated maps of the assault. She picked up a marker and drew a simple circle on a blank whiteboard. "It's a trap," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of the room. The Major scoffed. "Of course it's a trap, that's the point." "No," Eva said. "You're missing it. Thorn wants us to go in the front door. He wants us to use explosives. He's not testing our ability to breach. He's testing our intelligence. He thinks we're stupid. He thinks we're just like him." She drew a line from the circle. "This isn't a hard target, it's a soft one. The terrorists are role players. The hostages are role players. The chemical weapons are sensors. This isn't a firefight, it's a game of chess." She looked at the Ranger Major. "Your plan fails. The moment you blow the doors, the sensors kill the hostages. Thorn wins. He gets to stand up and say, 'See, the army is a blunt instrument.'" The room was silent. The Major was red-faced. "So what's your plan, Captain?" Colonel Sharp asked from the back. Eva turned to the whiteboard. "We don't play his game, we play ours." For the next 20 minutes, she laid it out. It was a plan so subtle, so complex, it was beautiful. It involved no explosives. It involved a local food delivery truck, a cyber attack that would loop the security cameras, and a psychological operation that would convince the terrorist role players to surrender without a shot. "You're going to talk them out?" the Ranger Major said, incredulous. "No," Eva said. "We're going to make them think the game is over. We're going to use their own communication system against them. My cyber guy is going to spoof a message from the exercise controller, Admiral Thorn himself, saying the game is over and they are to report to the debriefing area." "And the hostages?" "My team," Eva said, "will already be inside, not through the doors, through the sewer system. The one Thorn's team forgot to map. We will rescue the hostages and be gone before the terrorists even realize they've been tricked." "It's unconventional," the Major said. "It's precise," Eva countered. "It's the SF way. We don't just break the door. We pick the lock, make friends with the owner, and leave with the package before the enemy even knows we were there." There was a long silence. Colonel Sharp stood up. "We're going with Captain Restova's plan. Ghost Viper is in the lead. Everyone else, you are in support of her. Dismissed." As the room cleared, Eva's phone buzzed. It was a text from her babysitter. "Leo's cough is worse. He's asking for you." Eva's stomach clenched. She was winning the war on the whiteboard, but she was losing the one at home. She quickly typed a reply. "I'm in a meeting. Can't leave. Give him the medicine. I'll be home as soon as I can." She closed her eyes for just 1 second, her heart torn in two. She was proving herself as a soldier, but she felt like she was failing as a mother. She took a deep breath, pushed the emotion down, and turned back to the map. The exercise was in 6 hours. Thorn was waiting. The Joint Operations Center, or JOC, was a massive, dark room. It felt more like a movie set than a military base. The far wall was a solid bank of high-definition screens, showing dozens of camera feeds from the training area, a sprawling, recreated city known as Range 78. Rear Admiral Marcus Thorn stood in the center of the room like a Roman emperor in the Colosseum. He held a ceramic mug of coffee, his arms crossed, a smug, satisfied look on his face. His aides stood around him, quiet and nervous. He was here to watch the army fail. "All right," Thorn boomed, his voice filling the room. "Let's see what the filing cabinet hero has cooked up for us. Someone start the clock. Exercise begins now." On the main screen, the target building sat quiet. It was a 3-story concrete structure, a mock-up of an embassy. Inside, as the intel stated, were 12 hostages and 24 terrorist role players, armed with simunition rifles and fake suicide vests. Thorn stared at the main entrance feed. He stared at the roof feed. He was waiting for the explosion. He was waiting for the helicopters. He was waiting for the chaos. Nothing happened. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The only sound in the JOC was the quiet hum of the servers. Thorn's eye twitched. "What are they doing?" he muttered to his aide. "Are they even moving? Is their equipment broken?" "Sir," the aide said, tapping on a keyboard, "we show their command element is active, but they are not moving on the target." "They're scared," Thorn scoffed. "They're afraid to scratch the paint. This is what I'm talking about, risk-averse. They're trying to plan their way out of a firefight." An hour passed. Thorn was getting angry. He was packing. "This is ridiculous. They're wasting my time. They've failed the time metric already. The hostages are getting nervous. This is a failure of command." Colonel Sharp stood in the back of the JOC, near the coffee machine, watching Thorne, not the screens. He was perfectly calm. "Sir," a young comms operator said, his voice hesitant. We have a problem." "What is it, son?" Thorne snapped. "The internal cameras, sir, in the embassy, the feeds. They're gone, all of them." Thorne's head whipped around. "What, how?" "They're not gone, sir," the operator said, his fingers flying. "There, looping, we're seeing the same 30 seconds of an empty hallway over and over." A cold dread began to creep into Thorne's gut. "The terrorists did it. They cut the feeds." "No, sir, this is an external breach. Someone is in our system." Before Thorne could respond, another operator shouted, "Sir, the hostage cell phones just went dark, all 12 of them. We've lost their tracking signals." "And the terrorist comms," another operator added, his eyes wide. I'm patching it through." He hit a switch. A tinny sound filled the JOC. It was music. "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley. The terrorist comms network was being rickrolled. Thorne's face, which had been smug then angry, was now just confused. What is this? What is going on?" On one of the smaller screens, a feed from an outer perimeter gate, a white, unmarked local food delivery truck pulled up. The guards on the gate, role players, waved it in. They were expecting it. They had gotten a spoofed email an hour earlier saying their lunch was being delivered. "A food truck," Thorne whispered in disbelief. "What is a food truck?" And then the main screen, the one that had been showing the looped video of the empty hall, flickered. It went black, and then a new image appeared. It was a live feed, but it wasn't from a security camera. It was from a helmet cam. It was inside the hostage room. The room was empty. The hostages were gone. In the center of the room, on a table, was a small white note. The camera zoomed in. Written on the note in neat, clear handwriting were 2 words. "Game over." Thorne was speechless. His mouth was open. The coffee mug in his hand was visibly shaking. "Where are they?" he demanded, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Where are the hostages? Where is the assault team?" A new feed appeared. It was an aerial drone shot. It showed a patch of woods 2 miles away from the embassy. 12 hostages were sitting on the ground, drinking water bottles. Standing around them, not in heavy armor, but in simple, sterile uniforms, was a small, 6-person team. One of them, a slender figure, looked up at the drone. She raised her hand and gave a simple, polite wave. "Who is that?" Thorne choked out. "That's Captain Rostova, sir," Colonel Sharp said, walking forward. His voice was calm, but it had an edge of pure, cold steel. "And her team." "But how?" Thorne stammered. "There was no breach, no explosions. We would have seen them." "You were watching the front door, Admiral," Sharp said. "You were expecting a show. You were expecting noise. Captain Rostova's team used the sewer tunnels, the ones your planners and the terrorist role players forgot existed. They were inside the building before the exercise even began." Thorne just stared, his mind unable to process it. "Her cyber specialist looped your cameras," Sharp continued, his voice like a history teacher explaining a lesson. "Her comms specialist took over the terrorist network. While you were listening to pop music, her team, led by First Sergeant Grizz, was quietly cutting the hostages free from their bomb vests and walking them one by one out the sub-basement. They were in and out. No shots fired. No alarms. No casualties." The room was stone-cold silent. Every operator, every aide, every analyst. They were all watching the screen, watching the small figure of Captain Eva Rostova. A quiet, single voice came over the JOC's main speaker. It was Eva. Her voice was as calm and clear as it had been over the radio in Syria. "Viper team has the packages secured. All hostages are safe. All enemy combatants are accounted for and are currently in the mess hall, very confused about their lunch order." She paused. "Colonel Sharp, request permission to stand down the team. My son has a doctor's appointment I need to get to." Thorne's face was white. It was the color of chalk. He had been so focused on proving his point, on his own arrogance, that he had never even considered this. He hadn't just been beaten. He had been outsmarted. He had been outmaneuvered. He had been humiliated, silently and perfectly, by the very woman he had mocked as a hero of the filing cabinet. He had just seen a ghost. The after-action review, or AAR, was held in the base's main auditorium. It was a formal affair, and the room was packed. Every officer involved in the exercise was there, along with the leadership from every participating unit. It was a room full of Rangers, Special Forces, and Navy personnel. And at the front on a small stage sat Rear Admiral Marcus Thorne, Colonel Sharp, and Captain Eva Rostova. Thorne looked like a man who hadn't slept. His face was grim, his dress uniform looked stiff and uncomfortable. Eva was, as always, quiet and composed. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. "The exercise did not go as planned," Thorne began, his voice flat. He was reading from a script. He hated this. He hated being wrong. He hated more than anything being made to look foolish. "The blue team," he continued, "failed to adhere to the expected parameters of the exercise." A few officers in the front row, Thorne's own men, nodded. "They used unconventional tactics, tactics that in a real-world scenario would be unacceptably risky." He looked directly at Eva, his eyes narrowed. "You can't count on food trucks in a firefight, Captain. You can't talk your way out of a gun battle." He was trying to regain control. He was trying to tear her victory apart, to find a flaw, to prove that his way, the loud way, was still the right way. "You got lucky," he spat. "Your plan was a parlor trick. It was a 1-in-a-million shot that would get a real team killed." The room was tense. This was not a review, it was an execution. Thorne was trying to salvage his pride by destroying her career. Eva remained silent. She just watched him. Before she could answer, Colonel Sharp stood up. He walked to the lectern. "With all due respect, Admiral, I believe you are mistaken. Captain Rostova's plan was not lucky. It was precise, it was intelligent, and it was based on experience." Thorne scoffed. "Experience? What experience? Pushing paper." "No, Admiral," Sharp said, his voice dropping, becoming low and dangerous. "Experience saving your men." Thorne froze. "What did you say?" Colonel Sharp turned to the large screen behind him. "Lieutenant, bring up file 749er. Authorization, Sharp Alpha 01. A new image appeared on the screen. It wasn't a map of the training range. It was a grainy, black-and-white satellite photo. A photo of a desert village, the village from Syria. "3 months ago, Admiral," Sharp said, his voice ringing with authority, "your old unit, SEAL Team 5 Alpha Platoon, was pinned down in Al-Hasaka. They were compromised. They were surrounded. And their team leader, in a panic, called for an airstrike on a civilian hospital he thought was an enemy command post." Thorne's face had gone from white to a sickly green. He knew this mission. He had buried the report. It was the darkest mark on his command record. The SEALs had been pulled out in disgrace. "That airstrike," Sharp continued, "would have constituted a war crime. It would have destroyed our relationship with our local allies and gotten hundreds of innocent people killed. That airstrike was denied." He paused, letting the words hang in the silent room. "It was denied by the mission commander on the ground, a commander who had better intelligence, a commander who knew the butcher was not in the hospital but in the mosque next door." Sharp clicked the remote. A new photo appeared. It was a blurry image from a drone feed, a dark figure moving through a courtyard. "That commander," Sharp said, "infiltrated the compound. Alone. While the SEAL team was drawing all the fire, this single operator went in, neutralized the HVT's personal guard, captured the butcher alive, and recovered the intel that proved his network was planning an attack on this very base." Thorne was barely breathing. "The SEALs on the ground never saw her face," Sharp said, his voice like thunder. "The target never heard her coming. The only reason we even know what happened is from this drone feed. The call sign for that operation was Ghost Viper." He clicked the remote one last time. The image that appeared was clear. It was a photo taken at the exfil point. It showed the operator, her face covered in dust and sweat, helping a wounded SEAL. The operator was Captain Eva Rostova. The entire room, hundreds of hardened soldiers, was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Every eye in the auditorium turned from the screen to the Admiral, and then, with a new, dawning sense of awe, to the small, quiet woman sitting on the stage. They weren't just looking at a filing cabinet, Captain. They were looking at the legend, the Ghost Viper, the operator who had done the unwinnable job. The woman who had, single-handedly, saved Admiral Thorne's old unit from a court-martial, or worse. Thorne's arrogance, his rage, his pride, it all just evaporated. It drained from his face, leaving behind the hollow, terrified look of a man who has just seen the truth. He looked at Eva. He didn't see a staffer. He didn't see a single mom. He saw one of the most dangerous, most brilliant soldiers he had ever been in the presence of. Slowly, his body shaking, Admiral Marcus Thorne stood up. He turned to face Captain Rostova. He didn't say a word. He couldn't. Instead, he brought his heels together with a crack that echoed through the silent room. He raised his hand to his brow in the sharpest, most profound salute of his entire life. A rear admiral saluting a captain. It was the ultimate sign of respect. It was surrender, it was an apology. Eva Rostova looked at him. Her face was calm. She stood, her back straight, and slowly, with perfect precision, she returned the salute. The story ends as it must in a quiet, small apartment. The lights are dim. Eva is sitting on the edge of a small bed, reading a bedtime story to Leo. His cough is gone. The specialist, the one TRICARE had denied, had been approved. It seemed Admiral Thorne had made a few phone calls after all. Leo closed his eyes, drowsy with sleep. "Mom." "I'm here, sweetie." Are you a hero of the filing cabinet?" he whispered, his voice sleepy. Eva smiled, a real warm smile that reached her eyes. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Something like that, baby," she said. "Something like that." She turned off the light but sat in the dark for a long time. A mother, a captain, a hero. No one in that room or any room would ever make the mistake of underestimating her again.